What's up, gangsters? Man, am I right? And if you don't know, ask Alex Garland, as he wrote and directed a A24 produced psychological horror thriller called Man. And Garland, he's no joke. I mean, he wrote Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later and Sunshine, and directed the rather clever sci-fi movies Ex Machina and Annihilation. Was Annihilation clever? It was pretty cool though, right? And so now his latest feature, Man. Oh, man, what? Well, let's first take a look at the story and then talk about the elephant in the room.
We follow Harper, a recently widowed woman who retreats to this cottage in the English countryside to clear her head. But then some weird shit starts to happen because, yeah, men, am I right? And throughout, we cut to flashbacks and learn about her toxic relationship with an abusive husband.
So, and that's fine. That's a great premise. I'd watch that. I mean, I did. Twice. Guys, I actually really like this movie. It's just, I first want to talk to you guys about the movie's main criticism that I've been seeing a lot online, which I guess would contain spoilers, so skip the, let's say, here, in order to avoid all of that. But yeah, I basically already wrote it all in my Letterboxd review. Being that this movie feels like A24 self-parodying itself and elevated horror with seemingly zero self-awareness. See, and I'm not an expert here at all, and I wouldn't know the exact timeline, but I do always feel like the Babadook was pretty influential in the whole, the monster and the movie were actually just an allegory for trauma, and the protagonist dealing with and processing said trauma. Basically, it's just become such a predictable, easy and cheap, like overused trope in elevated or like art house horror. And then we have Man that does his cliche to a fucking T.
See, Harper came to this small countryside village to deal with the trauma and PTSD from being in an abusive relationship and her partner killing himself. But now all the men in town are being weird and bothering and assaulting her. Thus, the movie said something about trauma and grief and abusive relationships and toxic masculinity. Just without actually saying or adding anything to the discourse besides acknowledging its existence. On top of which, it's written and directed by a man, so I get that people are upset with that. It's just, with that being said, me personally, after just accepting that that is what it is, I don't know, I kind of really like this movie. It's very pretty. It's beautifully shot. I love the countryside setting. The cottage is gorgeous. I love the performances. Jessie Buckley as Harper, she's great, believable. And as predictably forced as it might be, I kind of love that they have basically all the men played by the same actor, Rory Kinnear. I personally initially didn't even notice. I figured that's just how all British people look like. But also because I just wasn't familiar with Kinnear as an actor, so I didn't know his like default look. The host character is fantastic. I love the scene in the beginning of him showing her around the cottage. It's great, even though nothing of importance really happens. Not sure about the Uncanny Valley kid character with Kinnear's face CGI'd on top of it though. What else? The soundtrack and sound design were rather effective. And it honestly does a great job at slowly creating this uneasy tension that just keeps growing and growing. Really, I was intrigued mostly throughout. And yeah, even though you get totally lost towards the end, and I'm sure Garland at this point was also just throwing a bunch of shit against the wall to see what sticks, I still thought it was pretty awesome. Just some good old what the fuckery, as long as you don't try and read into it too much. I mean, sure, all the men giving birth to other men through a vagina might be a very powerful statement, but more likely it's just a bunch of wacky bullshit.
So yeah, that's Man. Again, I totally understand the general consensus, like dislike towards this movie. I just don't think that just because of that, this movie should be immediately dismissed. Like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's like, not every movie needs to reinvent the genre. This movie just happens to take a bunch of modern horror tropes and cliches and run with it, and that's fine. The same way a horror movie like The Sadness, which we talked about the other day, that takes a bunch of overused older tropes, can still be a lot of fun. So was this to me. Really, the only difference is that the tropes that men use are just super trendy right now. But hey, that's just my opinion. Honestly, I'd love to hear what you guys think about this movie, so if you've seen it, feel free to let me know in the comments, and then I'll see you guys again in a couple of days for some more horrors of 2022. Cheers, guys. Have a nice day.